Hello, welcome back to GoTo the Biz Pro series. We've got pros, peers, and resources with us, and today we're joined with Jenny Crimmins with Crimmins Law, and we're so excited to talk to the audience today about HR law. The topic subject line today is going from you to two. So you're growing your workforce, you're an entrepreneur, you've grown by 100% of the workforce at that point. We started this GoTo Biz Resources series because there's just so many fantastic resources in the Kansas City region for small business, for startup, for businesses that are growing. And last year we got about 600 calls on what do I do now? And so we wanted, well, actually more than that, but those were the first time callers, you know. And so we wanted to bring some of our great resources to the audience and to the Kansas City region, and thought Facebook Live was a great way to do it. So we want to encourage anyone who's on and watching live, you can ask a question, and there'll be this voice that comes over that will share that question with us so Jenny can answer. And then I want to thank WorksLab. WorksLab is a co-working community in the Innovation Center, and I want to thank the owner of WorksLab for allowing us to come in when it fit their schedule. So thank you to the audience that's here with the GoTo Biz Resources series. Thank you, Jenny, for being here today. We appreciate that Crimmins Law is here. You know, one of the things we pointed out last week is that our professionals are professionals that you need to meet, whether it's lawyers, accountants, business advisors, those marketing, branding people. Jenny is an expert in HR law, and in our last GoTo Pro, we had a staffing agency here. We really, when you talk about going from you to two, you've grown your workforce on 100%. And so you've gone from I'm doing everything myself to growing that workforce and bringing somebody into your field of trust and to do business with you. And so what are some of the things that entrepreneurs and those startups need to be mindful of as they're doing that?
Yeah. Lee, first, thank you for inviting me. I'm
you're
thrilled
welcome
to be here. So I think there's a few things. One, I would say, would be timekeeping systems. So when you have a new employee, the Department of Labor requires you to keep accurate time records. You need to maintain those time records for at least 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So timekeeping is critical, and figuring out what is work. So it's not just when the person might be in the office. If you've given them a smartphone and they're working out of the office, or they are sometimes taking phone calls or coming in on the weekends, you need to make sure that all of that time gets captured, which is pretty easy with some of the state-of-the-art apps and timekeeping systems that are out there. There are a lot of free ones. The Department of Labor even has a free app that you can use if you don't feel like your business can pay for some more sophisticated timekeeping software. But
is that so when you hire someone and they come in as part of your executive team and you're working together, is that a non-exempt or one of the first things you have to check when you're hiring someone is it an exempt or a non-exempt? So the Department of Labor requires you to keep time records for your non-exempt employees. I tend to recommend you should probably. And those are salaried, right? Non-salaried employees. Those are your workers that are owed overtime. So you can have a salaried non-exempt employee. Okay. So your worker who's owed overtime. I actually recommend that you should probably track all of your time records, including yours, to see if your business is being profitable. Are we spending too many hours doing X, Y, or Z, and how can we be more efficient at it to make money? So my recommendation is that regardless of whether your employee is exempt or non-exempt, you should have them keep their time. See if they're being efficient with their time, see if it's profitable to you as a business. But in terms of what the Department of Labor requires, your non-exempt employees need to keep accurate time records for overtime purposes and minimum wage. So as we talk about that employee or that employer who's bringing on a workforce for the very first time, or they're even they're bringing in workforce for a certain period of time, there's a difference between hiring somebody and contracting someone. And what we see more often than not in an entrepreneurial setting where they're not really quite sure where their market's going, where their market's just adopting, or they need to grow quickly, they say, "I'll just contract this person. We'll just pay this person cash." There's some real danger to that. So what's the difference between that and, oh my goodness, what's the danger? Yeah, what's the consequences?
No, there is some real danger, and the Department of Labor in the last year has come out and said their belief is that most workers are employees. So they are strenuously cracking down on an independent contractor, and currently there is a work share program. If the Department of Labor says you're in violation and this person was an employee and not a contractor, they will turn you into the IRS, and that's where your penalties get really steep. So the IRS can not only require you to pay all of your back FICA, FUTA type employer taxes, but they can also penalize you. So
oh wow, okay.
The other potential problem that you face if you've misclassified a worker as an independent contractor is that person might have some workers' comp liability, you might have minimum wage liability problems, you might have overtime problems, so you could be facing additional damages there. If you're struggling with, I don't know whether this person's a worker or a contractor, a few things that I would have you think about is it really kind of boils down to control. Okay. Are you telling the person what to do, how to do their job, when to do their job? Are you dictating kind of the terms of the work? And if the answer to those are yes, odds are the Department of Labor and IRS are going to think that you are their employer. If a person is bringing to you a specialty issue that's not the central focus of your business, you're probably okay with them as an independent contractor. But if you're worried about it, it never hurts to just get that double checked by a lawyer or the Department of Labor. You can always call the Department of Labor and get some guidance.
So they can connect with that too. So if you're a small business, for example, we're doing a trade show today. We're doing the Independence Regional Business Expo, and I'm excited about that. There's going to be people that are going to demonstrate product there. So there may be that one-off demonstration that they're going to bring somebody in who knows the market or the product, but they aren't going to use them full time. Is that that's kind of a strange place, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a very gray area, and I would still caution people to be very careful with that. If you are kind of controlling that entire relationship and telling that person how to do their craft, you've got a good shot the Department of Labor is going to say that's an employee, even if it's a part-time employee or an employee that's seasonal.
Okay.
Or limited purpose. So
okay, that's interesting. So just be aware, right?
Yep. They look for control.
Okay.
So when I kind of think about it, if we're having our houses painted, if you own your own home, you don't come in and tell the painter, I want you to use this paintbrush and I want you to paint X, Y, or Z or use these tools. The painter has brought his craft to your house. You might pick out the paint color, but you don't really dictate anything to
how he gets it done. Correct. Or even the timeline that he gets it done. Right. He can't be there at midnight.
Correct.
So it has to be reasonable.
That's right. You're not controlling him. You don't control every aspect of that job. But with an employee, if you say, I need you here at midnight, and if you're not here, then I'm firing you, you're exerting a lot more control.
But if it's in the case of the painter, if you say, hey, I really want to have dinner with my family by 8 o'clock, could you please give me back a 10 by 10 foot square foot of my house? Then that's a little bit different.
That's right. That's okay. Right. And you may say I can, but then I'm not coming back until 3 weeks from now when my schedule permits.
But that's his deal. That's
right.
That's not my control, and that's kind of the difference of he's bringing his craft and he's there, he's contracted, and hopefully that's a paper contract too.
Right. Correct.
So that's something we were talking earlier offline about documentation and making sure that you have good practices, whether you have one employee, whether you have 10 employees, whether you have 20 or 50, right. There's different rules or different laws that flow into effect through the Department of Labor and with the IRS at different thresholds. So we were talking about it's good practice to have the right paperwork and record keeping. What are some of the examples of that?
Yeah, so, and I will just caution, some of these are not required until your business has at least 20 employees or 50 employees, but my recommendation is start with your first employee because it's much easier to get good practices in place at the beginning than to go back and try to clean it up if you need to hire quickly. So a few things to think about when you're starting the hiring process. The EEOC does ask that you keep records of any job postings that you might make, applications that you receive, any research that you might have done if you ran a background check on a person. You should keep all of that for a minimum of 2 years. In the event that you were investigated for some type of illegal discrimination or harassment claim, it is illegal to hire or base your hiring decisions on race, gender, religion, all of those buckets. So keep all of that paperwork. I keep mine based upon the date kind of I do the job, but you can keep it in different ways. So I got my kind of job posting on top, all the applications and research we did on the back, and keep that in a folder for a couple of years until you don't need it. Once you've hired somebody, you need to make sure that you fill out your I-9 form. Make sure you fill that out properly. ICE can come in and investigate, and I hear there's a fine every time they see something wrong. So if you are getting an ICE investigation, I would call a lawyer and have them help you walk through that process. So
what is ICE? Because I put it in my drink, and I'm not really quite sure.
That's the immigration control.
Okay, all right.
We've been hearing a little bit more about them in a different context in the news these days. But,
that's right.
But they are also responsible for reviewing employers' I-9 forms to make sure that you're requiring with immigration all the immigration requirements. So you need to make sure you keep a copy of those documents. If somebody brought you their passport, keep a copy. If someone brought you their social security card and driver's license, keep a copy of that. I keep mine in a locked file. Obviously, it's personal information for people, and you don't want to risk having those confidential documents stolen. So I would recommend locking that, but you need to keep that for as long as they're employed with you.
Is there a period of time after they're employed?
I recommend 10 years at least.
Wow. Okay.
Because if somebody comes back, then you've
you've already got it.
Yeah, you can just double check and update stuff. But
Okay.
And then W-4 forms, W-2 forms, all of those kinds of tax forms that you're going to get as you employ somebody, I would go ahead and keep all of that as well. And then again, your time records. Make sure you're keeping your time records for the Department of Labor.
Well, so that's the record keeping, making sure that you have the appropriate documentation. That you also, is there a piece or a part of the interview or the application process that's really vital? Again, if we're talking small business, they don't do that an awful lot.
No.
Larger companies, they've got someone who's well versed and trained in that. Is there something that they should be aware of other than the questions what not to ask?
Right.
That's a whole nother series. We won't get into that now. But from a record keeping perspective, is it or is there something that they need to know just really for that real practical purpose of I'm hiring somebody, I'm looking at hiring somebody now. It's just me. I'm pretty casual about it. What do I need to do?
It's okay if you're casual about it. I would just keep anything that you do look at.
Okay.
So, and I would actually caution against looking at social media because you can fall into some of those protected categories. You might never ask somebody if they're pregnant at an interview. You shouldn't be asking anybody if they're pregnant. But if you're looking on their Facebook page, you might inadvertently discover that they're pregnant, and then that just kind of sets you up. So
okay.
I do recommend kind of staying away from social media as a small business. Larger businesses can put screens and have one person review social media and funnel through only appropriate
That's really interesting because that's really where the first place a lot of people go is social media to find out about the prospective person that's coming into their organization.
You just need to be sensitive to the fact that you could be looking at information that you would never, that's on that list of do not ask questions.
Sure.
And unintentionally obtain some of that information and set yourself up.
Mm-hmm. So. Wow, thank you so much. That's really, really good information. I'm trying to think, there's just so many things that center around growing a workforce and building that workforce, especially as you're a startup and you're rolling into it. I appreciate that you say you can keep it casual. However, you've got to have this back office good practice already in place so that you can defend yourself ultimately, to make sure that you have those good practices documented. Thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate that. We really appreciate your time. Thank you to the audience that was with us with our GoTo Biz Resources series. We look forward again to our next series, which is on the 17th. That's Wednesday at 2 o'clock with Dr. Tammy Ogren with Morph Consulting, and she's going to talk to us about price point. So you've got a product. You are going to manufacture that product. How do you do that, and how do you enter the market with the right price point? So she doesn't know that yet, but that's what our topic is. And so we look forward to that next GoTo Biz Pro. You can watch everything online. You can go back and look at our other series. And thanks again to WorksLab for having us. And thank you again, Jenny, for being here.